That was me. So, who has their Christmas playlist? Anyone admit it? Yes, well done. We've certainly got it in our house. Anyone got their Christmas tree up? So have we, yeah. We're very proud of our tree, actually. We bought it last year in a pot, and it has survived the storms. It got knocked over at least 15 times, occasionally for about 2 weeks when we kind of, it got knocked over while we were on holiday, and then we were like, oh, so sorry. And then that balmy summer, it really did not enjoy that summer. So it's a little bit bald in the middle. So we've got some fake ivy that is covering up a few little bald patches, but we absolutely love it, and it has come in, and we get much joy from this tree. Anyone got a favourite Christmas ad already? They were out in mid-November. Favourite, least favourite? Christmas is officially here in our season that we walk and prepare our way towards Christmas. Is that stress? Is that joy? Is that busyness, or is that freedom? Today I want to look at our first Sunday of Advent as something else. And I want to look at it as a time to look forward. In our reading, we looked at a time when we anticipate the return of Jesus. It's interesting, this first Sunday of Advent, the readings are often very similar. We think of Advent as preparing our time when the birth of Jesus, and this is absolutely true. But we as a church, and we as readings that we have on this Sunday, we do it by actually thinking about when Jesus will return and how we feel about that. Because there's sort of a similarity between preparing for Jesus' first coming to preparing that feeling of his second coming, of his return. So if you ask me what would a summary of what Advent is, I would say this simple phrase, that it is an exercise in good waiting. I think in today's age it is becoming increasingly difficult to wait, and certainly more difficult to wait well in an age where everything becomes instant. To make Advent 4 weeks long can seem excessive, but I think it teaches us a really valuable lesson that these sorts of things don't come instantly. Our faith doesn't come instantly. And so we have a time when we can practice good waiting. This week on the Alpha course, on the video, they had an amazing story, or a kind of observation of the British psyche, I suppose. Imagine you've gone through winter and it's sort of mid-February, and you have those sort of early balmy days that you have. Men, what do? We get our shorts out, we get our t-shirts out. If we're not stopped, we get the barbecue out, and we think summer is here. But what happens 2 days later? The snows return, the blizzards come, the storm comes. We always get proved wrong, don't we? It's interesting, in our reading today, we had the analogy of the fig tree and all the trees. And it's talked about those early little leaves. Those leaves that come in the early season that say summer will come, that this tree will fruit again. But it's important to remember that that isn't the final product. That isn't the end of the story. It's this sort of foretaste, the sign that we will get there eventually. In The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, you had the time when it was always winter and never summer. What was the sign that summer was coming? It was when Santa came and Christmas. Remember when things started to change? Advent is that season of waiting. It's interesting with this season of waiting. Why do we pair Jesus' first coming to his second coming? If asked, how do you know that Jesus or God will come down to earth a second time? And you can reply with this: because he came the first time. It would seem hard to believe that God could come to earth, but we know it to be true because God in Jesus has already done it once before. And that's why we pair these readings together. We prepare for the first coming, for the second coming, by remembering that he came the first time. We know that he will come a second time because he has already done it before. So our passage, in a sense, is a quick glimpse of heaven. Jesus gives this snapshot of what will to come, because he reminds us that it's worth waiting for. That glimpse is like the first warm day. It's not the full story. The full story will come when God will return again, but it is a foretaste. And it reminds us to get excited. Do you get excited that God will be coming back again and that we will meet him? Genuinely, that really excites me. And I'd love that it would excite all of us. The end of the reading goes something like this: be alert at all times, praying that you may have the strength to stand all the things that are to come, so that you can stand before the Son of Man. I like to think of this as our ultimate reality. Not the reality that we see around us on a day-to-day basis, but something more important than those things which we can see. The Bible encourages us to focus on the things not seen, and not just the things that we see. Why? Not because the invisible is less important, but actually, ultimately, we put more value and more strength in the things that we don't see currently than those things which are immediate and around us. Now, our ultimate reality may be not visible to us, but ultimately it will be more real. And so today's reading, we see a little glimpse of it. And I think around us we see glimpses of it. When we pray, whether we hear answered prayer, whether we have prophecies where God speaks into our life, where we see healing around us. These are like the first leaves on the fig tree that we heard from our reading. These are like the first warm days of spring. I want to leave us with this point. That analogy of the leaves on the tree and seeing God around us, this should encourage us to wait well. And if I encourage us over this whole Advent season, my encouragement would be this: to look for God at work in our lives, and to not assume that it will all be packaged up nicely and instantly. We're given this 4-week time frame to remember that God will come again, just like he came the first time, and it will all be worthwhile. Amen.